At just 12 years old, he came from a place where dreams were often silenced by hunger. Yet tonight, the world was about to hear his voice through dance. His name was Liam Cruz, a boy from the Philippines who danced not for fame but for love, for the mother who taught him to move even when life stood still. No one in that audience, and not even Simon Cowell, could have imagined what was about to happen when the music stopped. The morning sun had barely risen over the quiet fishing village of Cebu when 12-year-old Liam Cruz began to dance. The sand beneath his bare feet was still cool, wet from the retreating tide, and the salty wind carried the faint rhythm of the ocean's waves, his only orchestra. His small wooden house stood behind him, patched with metal sheets and hope. Inside, his mother, Maria, lay on a simple bed, watching her son through a cracked window, her heart swelling with pride and pain all at once. Life had never been easy for Liam. His father, a fisherman, had been lost to a storm when Liam was just 5. Since then, it had been just him and his mother, surviving on love and little else. But what they lacked in comfort, they made up for in spirit. Maria had once been a dancer herself, performing at small-town festivals before illness stole her strength. Yet even when her body weakened, her eyes still sparkled whenever she watched her son move. Every morning, Liam would wake up before the world did. He would roll out the tattered mat, set the old radio by the window, and press play. The static would fade into the soft, crackling voice of Michael Jackson, his hero, his teacher, his inspiration. Liam didn't understand every word, but he felt every beat. Each note filled his heart with something pure, something bigger than poverty, bigger than pain. When Maria saw him practicing under the sunrise, she would whisper softly, "Liam, anak. Remember, dancing is not about showing off. It's about sharing your heart. When you dance with kindness, people will feel your soul, even if they don't understand your story." Those words became his compass. Every step, every spin, every breath he took was guided by that truth. He didn't dream of fame. He only dreamed of making his mother smile, of bringing joy to others the way Michael Jackson's music brought light to him. But as days passed, Maria's illness worsened. The hospital bills grew heavier than their little home could carry. There were nights when Liam didn't eat, choosing instead to save a few pesos for her medicine. And still, he never stopped dancing. Sometimes neighbors would gather near the shore, clapping along to his practice sessions. A fisherman once said, "That boy, he's got angels in his feet." When Liam saw his mother's strength fading, he made a promise, whispered under the stars, "Mama, one day I'll dance on a big stage, and when I do, the world will know your name." He didn't know where that stage would be or how he would ever get there, but dreams, when fueled by love, have a way of finding their path. That night, Maria smiled faintly and said, "Then dance, my son, and let kindness be your rhythm." And from that day forward, Liam didn't just dance, he danced for hope. The stage lights of America's Got Talent blazed like 1,000 suns, far brighter than anything Liam Cruz had ever seen back home. As he stood behind the heavy velvet curtains, his heart pounded like a drum, not from fear but from the weight of a promise. The cheers of the massive audience rolled through the air, blending with the hum of excitement and the faint echo of his mother's voice in his heart. "Dance for kindness, anak. Let the world feel you." Liam's small hands trembled as a stage assistant adjusted the microphone near his face. His clothes were simple, a white shirt, black pants, and scuffed shoes borrowed from a church charity. He had never worn anything this formal before, yet somehow it felt right. It wasn't about looking perfect. It was about showing the world his heart. The host smiled down at him. "Are you ready, little man?" Liam took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, sir." As he stepped onto the stage, the roar of the audience faded into a distant hum. The vastness of the theater stretched endlessly before him. Lights, cameras, faces. He blinked under the glow, his small figure almost swallowed by the enormity of it all. Then came that moment. Simon Cowell's gaze met his. Sharp, curious, yet somehow gentle. "What's your name, young man?" "Liam Cruz," he replied softly. "And where are you from, Liam?" "From the Philippines, sir." Simon leaned forward, intrigued. "And why are you here today?" Liam hesitated for a second, his throat tightening. He looked down at his trembling hands, then lifted his eyes, his voice barely above a whisper. "My mom is sick, and she always told me that when I dance, I can make people smile. So I just want to share that smile with the world." The audience went silent. Not a sound, not a cough, just stillness. In that silence, everyone saw something rare, pure innocence and love unshaken by struggle. Simon nodded slowly, visibly moved. "Well then, Liam." Make a smile, the lights dimmed. The familiar beats of Michael Jackson's Billie Jean filled the hall, and in that instant the shy boy vanished, replaced by a performer beyond his years. His body moved with breathtaking precision, every glide, every turn echoing Michael's spirit. The crowd began to cheer, then scream. People stood, phones raised, eyes wide with disbelief. But behind every perfect move, there was more than talent. There was purpose. Each step was a prayer for his mother. Each spin, a whisper of gratitude for everyone who had ever shown him kindness. In that glowing moment, a boy from a forgotten village was lighting up one of the biggest stages in the world. He wasn't dancing to win. He was dancing to give. And though no one knew it yet, this performance would soon become one of the most unforgettable moments in AGT history. The crowd was electrified. Every beat of Billie Jean echoed through the theater, bouncing off the walls as Liam Cruz, that small, barefoot boy from the Philippines, moved across the stage like a spark of magic. His moonwalks glided smoother than silk, his spins sharp and effortless. But more than his skill, it was the soul behind each movement that left the audience breathless. You could feel his story in every step, the loneliness, the love, the hope that carried him here. Judges exchanged stunned glances. How could someone, so young, so humble, command the stage like that? Simon Cowell leaned forward, elbows on the table, his eyes never leaving the boy. The theater pulsed with applause, whistles, and cheers, and until suddenly, it didn't. A harsh crack came from the sound booth, and then silence. The music died mid-beat. The audience gasped. Liam froze for half a second, his chest rising and falling, his eyes wide. You could almost hear his heart pounding in the stillness. For a child, this was every performer's nightmare, to have your moment crumble without warning. Stage lights flickered. A crew member panicked backstage. But then, something remarkable happened. Liam closed his eyes. He took a breath, slow, steady, brave. And when he opened them again, there was no fear, only peace. He didn't walk off. He didn't wait for the music to return. He kept dancing. No instruments, no backup, just the rhythm of his soul. The first few movements were quiet, uncertain. Then the audience began to clap. Slowly at first, then louder, stronger, until thousands of hands created a rhythm that filled the hall. It was as if the crowd had become his band, their hearts sinking with his courage. Liam's face lit up. He spun, slid, and kicked, feeding off their energy. The people who had come to watch a show were now part of it. Simon's expression softened. Sofia Vergara wiped her tears. Heidi Klum whispered, "Oh my God." There was something transcendent in that moment, the connection between one child and thousands of strangers united by kindness. Liam was no longer dancing for himself. He was dancing for everyone who ever lost their music but kept moving anyway. By the time he struck his final pose, sweat glistened on his face, his chest heaved, but his eyes, they sparkled with triumph. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was sacred. And then the entire theater exploded in applause. The crowd rose to their feet, roaring, clapping, crying. They weren't just cheering for talent, they were cheering for spirit. Liam had turned disaster into destiny. He had shown the world that when life goes quiet, courage can create its own music. The entire theater erupted. The audience was no longer sitting. They were standing, their cheers echoing off every wall, their applause thunderous and unending. Gold lights shimmered across the stage as Liam Cruz, the 12-year-old boy from the Philippines, stood frozen at center stage, his small frame trembling from exhaustion and disbelief. He had done it. He had finished his dance without music, carried only by courage, love, and the rhythm of thousands of hearts beating with him. Tears streaked his face as he looked up at the bright lights overhead. For a brief second he thought about his mother, lying in that dimly lit hospital room back home. He could almost hear her voice again. "When the world grows silent, Anak, listen to your heart. It will never fail you. Simon Cowell rose slowly from his seat, clapping, not the polite restrained applause he usually gave, but something real, deep, emotional. His eyes glistened, his jaw tightened as he stared at the little boy who had just turned failure into something miraculous. He took a step toward the mic. The crowd began to hush, anticipation filling the room. Simon leaned in, his voice uncharacteristically soft. Liam, you didn't just perform tonight. You reminded all of us what this show is really about. Courage, love, and heart. Liam's lip trembled as he tried to smile. The other judges nodded, visibly moved. Sofia Vergara placed a hand on her chest, whispering, "That was magic." Heidi Klum's eyes shimmered with tears, while Howie Mandel smiled wide, mouthing, "Unbelievable." Then Simon turned toward the audience, spreading his arms as if to say, "Are you feeling this too?" The crowd roared in agreement. And in that moment, that golden, unforgettable heartbeat of silence, Simon looked back at the boy, smiled softly, and said, "You didn't need music, son. Because you are the music." Then without hesitation, he slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. The explosion of golden confetti filled the air, cascading down like rain from heaven. Liam gasped as the golden light enveloped him. The music swelled again, triumphant, powerful, and the stage became a storm of tears, joy, and love. He fell to his knees, overcome by emotion, his tiny hands reaching out toward the falling glitter. Simon walked onto the stage, knelt beside him, and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You've just changed lives tonight," Simon whispered. "And somewhere out there, your mother's smiling the biggest smile of all." Liam's eyes glistened. He looked into the crowd, raised his arms toward the golden confetti, and whispered softly, "This is for you, Mama." The entire audience erupted once more, chanting his name. Liam, Liam, Liam. For that one shining moment, the whole world stood still, united by the story of a boy who had turned silence into a symphony of hope. The golden confetti had long settled, but the moment lived on, not just on stage, but in millions of hearts around the world. Clips of Liam Cruz's performance spread like wildfire across social media. Within hours, his name was trending globally. 12-year-old from the Philippines dances without music and wins the golden buzzer. People watched and rewatched the video, not for the flawless moves, but for what came after the music stopped. That was the moment they saw something real, something pure. In small homes in Manila, families gathered around old televisions, tears streaming as they whispered, "He's one of us." In New York cafes, strangers showed each other the clip, smiling through goosebumps. Even Simon Cowell's emotional reaction went viral, fans calling it the kindest moment in AGT history. But back home in the Philippines, in a humble hospital room filled with the scent of fresh flowers and the soft hum of machines, Liam's mother lay watching her son's video through tear-filled eyes. A nurse held her hand as she whispered, "That's my boy. That's my Liam." When Liam returned home weeks later, the entire neighborhood gathered at the small airport to welcome him. Banners painted with "Proud of you, MJ boy," fluttered in the breeze. Old women cried. Children danced in the streets wearing silver gloves and fedoras. But Liam didn't see himself as a celebrity. When asked by a reporter what he wanted to do next, his answer silenced everyone. "I want to start a dance school for kids who can't afford lessons," he said softly. "Because someone once told me, if you keep your heart kind, the world will dance with you," and that's exactly what he did. With part of his AGT prize, Liam opened a small studio named Heartbeat Academy, a place where barefoot kids learned not just steps, but stories. Where they were taught that greatness isn't in perfection, it's in passion. Months later, during an interview, Simon Cowell was asked about the most unforgettable moment in his career. He didn't hesitate. It was when a 12-year-old boy from the Philippines taught the world how to keep dancing, even when the music stops. The clip ended with Liam teaching a group of children under a mango tree, all of them laughing, their tiny feet kicking up dust as the sun dipped low. The camera zoomed in on Liam's face, why create that same bright, humble smile. "This is for every kid who thinks they're too small to make a difference," he said. "Just dance from your heart, the world will feel it." And as soft music swelled, his voice faded, replaced by words on screen. "Kindness is the rhythm the world needs most. If this story touched your heart, Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of hope, kindness, and humanity that will move your soul.